Hello friends, welcome. Friends, satellite communication. We are all excited and we have been waiting for such a long period of time to have a glimpse of satellite connectivity in India, especially satellite broadband. And Elon Musk company Starlink has been trying very hard to get an approval so that they can deploy their services in India. They have all the clearances, but still looks like that they still have not been able to get the final clearance. Today, I am going to discuss the news item which is all over the place in India is about Elon Musk's Starlink seeking fresh approval from the space regulator, which is called InSpace, for their Generation 2 satellites. Now, the question must be asked that if they have not been able to deploy their Generation 1 satellite services in India, why they have applied for Generation 2 satellite approval from InSpace. So today's video is going to be very, very interesting. Friends, what I have done is, because there are multiple players on ground. We have got Starlink, we have got OneWeb, we have got other satellite players like Amazon, Juniper, and all the mobile players who seem to have some kind of interest either in conflict or in alliance with these players. And then there is a regulatory framework which is kind of being evolving. We've already saw TRI coming out with the recommendation, and then there is a new consultation going on SCN network, which is satellite network, which will be used as a network service, not directly connected to the consumer. So all this mess must have confused you. So what I have done today is I am going to create a video series, which will be 3 videos, one by one, back to back, so that you can understand this full complexity clearly. It is not about the technology. It is about the vested interest and the regulation, how complex the interplay between these two different, dimensions. And what kind of alignments that we will see going forward between Indian entity and the foreign entity and an Indian entity trying to deploy their own constellation of satellites, right? So it will be very pretty interesting, friends. And I would like that you go through the full video series so as to get a complete picture. And I'm going to guarantee you that this kind of clarity you are not going to get from anywhere, because this whole space is new and it is very complex because multiple moving parts are there which have to be connected in order to get the picture clear. So today, friends, the first presentation, that part of the video series, is the India paradox. That satellite broadband is already mature all over the world. India, it is stuck in limbo. Why? Starlink, OneWeb, and other players have been able to get all the clearance, but they have not been able to deploy the services. Now, since broadband services have not been deployed in India, the question will be asked that the next satellite service, which is called direct to device, where the satellite connectivity is going to be in your mobile phone, the same mobile phone that you use for ordinary communication, will that service be more complex or easy to get, right? So this is the snapshot of the video series that I am going to do. First is the Gen 2 approval of Starlink and the capacity. Second will be the D2D spectrum war. Here we are going to, in this video, I'm going to give you a little bit of glimpse. In the next video, we are going to go all out on the D2D spectrum war, because that is the key. Spectrum is the key. And the video 3, we are going to talk about security control and business model, and what kind of security that D2D model is going to enable, which will make the deployment of D2D services, means direct to device services, easier compared to broadband. Okay. So let's go without wasting any time. 3 questions behind India's D2D race, right? The first question is that how Gen 2 application of Starlink will enable this D2D race. Why not Gen 1? Why Gen 2? Whose spectrum will be used? Because when you want to communicate directly on the mobile phone, you have to use either the mobile operator spectrum or a separate spectrum running in parallel in the S band or the L band, so that it can be integrated with the mobile device. Because mobile device cannot operate in high frequency band, the bands in which the broadband services operate. So you do not have much choice. Most important is that the spectrum has to be in the low frequency band, and the mobile operator spectrum becomes the ideal choice. The third is who will control the service. Will Starlink directly control the service on the mobile device, or the services is going to be controlled by the mobile player? What is going to make the security, people in our country, the governance system of our country more comfortable with allowing a particular model? Will they allow Starlink to directly control the customers, or they will be comfortable with the mobile operator controlling the customer from a security point of view? So we all know Gen1 authorization system. Why Gen1 or why authorization? First of all, let's talk about what is authorization. Then we're going to talk about what is Gen1 and what is Gen2. Authorization is to be taken from our space regulator. The space regulator is called IN-SPACE. Now, IN-SPACE is going to give all kind of authorization of space objects, right? So anybody who had to deal with space objects will have to get that authorization. Starlink already got the authorization of their Generation 1 satellites. Now, if you have an existing authorization of Generation 1 satellites, then, and if you are replacing the Generation 1 satellites without changing the structure of the satellites in terms of constellation scale, orbital mix, payload and spacecraft bus, antenna and beam operation, frequency ranges, then you don't require a fresh approval from IN-SPACE. You require a fresh approval from IN-SPACE only if these dimensions change. So it should be a new satellite, right? That's why. Since Generation 2 is a new satellite, therefore, Starlink has applied for a fresh approval. Okay. Now, friends, even if you get an approval from IN-SPACE, you still will not be able to launch services, as we have seen in case of Generation 1, that in spite of Starlink getting all these approvals, they are stuck in the last stage of the approval, which is security. That may be the concern why the broadband services of Gen 1 satellites have not yet been deployed. So since we do not have a clear glimpse of what satellites and what satellite configuration Starlink has applied to the Indian regulator IN-SPACE, we can get some idea from the FCC approval, which Starlink has got recently for their Gen 2 satellites. So this is the FCC approval, see? And this approval came on 9th January 2026. In this approval, what Starlink has done is they have given all kinds of frequencies, because there are various aspects. I'm going to focus only on frequencies. So the Gen 2 satellites frequencies are the following. You see here. So these are the broadband frequencies. And then we have the supplementary coverage from space, which is the D2D frequencies. So there are two sets of frequencies, one within US and there are other set of frequencies outside US, right? So here is the outside US. So because the frequencies have changed, the structure of the satellites has changed, the height of the satellites has changed. So they have requested up to 30,000 satellites for approval from FCC, but FCC has granted only 1,500 satellites. Okay. Now, the main, dimension of the Gen 2 satellites, apart from frequency, is the lower orbit. Earlier, the orbit was 525 to 535. Now the orbit has changed from 340 to 485. Now you will ask a simple question: how does it matter? See, if you have lower orbit, then the footprint also becomes low. Now, if your footprint becomes low, then what happens is that in order to cover a geography of this size, you can actually have multiple footprint. When you have multiple footprint, then you multiply the capacity by n. So you can serve, just like in case of terrestrial network, in order to serve an area with larger density, what you do, you put multiple base stations. Similarly, these satellites being on lower orbit can serve more area, more denser population, and will give better capacity. Also, the latency also reduces and the services become almost at par with what is capable of in case of 5G. Okay. So this is the earlier approval which Starlink got. So we have got the user link and the gateway link. And I will show you directly in the in-space page. So if you go here, and this is the, not this, this is the link that I have in front of me. And here if you search Starlink, and you can clearly see that Starlink got the Gen1, Generation 1 in-space approval on 8th of July 2025. And it is valid till 7th of July 2030. And these are the gateway frequencies and these are the user link which I have captured in this slide, right? So you can take a screenshot of this. Now, what is Gen 2 going to do? As I told you that I really don't have any inside information because the application which Starlink has made to in-space is confidential. But by looking at what FCC has, what they have told FCC and what kind of approval that they have sought from FCC, the frequency band that they are focusing on, I can make some inference. So that's what I am going to do here. And if you look at from a broadband point of view, earlier they had lower frequencies, not very low, but reasonably low compared to what they are seeking right now. Earlier it was KU and Ka band where the bandwidths were a little thinner. Now, as you go higher up the ladder with V band and E band and W band, your block sizes increases. Therefore, it makes the overall bandwidth much more. So your throughput increases. So you are able to serve with higher density, higher speed to the mobile, to the broadband subscribers. But there is a problem that as you go higher up in the frequency band, the rain fading becomes very, very high and therefore services become a little bit unreliable. Now, there is another set of frequencies which Starlink has applied in FCC in their Gen 2, Generation 2 satellites, which is for D2D. So this, as I told you, this you can find here. So if you look at this, here is the supplementary coverage from space. This is specifically for US. And then we have got a set of frequencies which are outside US. So what I've done is I am using this chart to map what is relevant for India. Because the satellite will have the capability to radiate in India. So those bands which are relevant for India, apart from the L band and the S band, which is very difficult to get because of their existing usage, which we are going to talk in the next part of this video. But the existing band, the 1800 megahertz, the 2100 megahertz, the 2300 megahertz, and 2500 megahertz, these are mapped to the approval which they have got in FCC US, right? But the US specific, which is the PCS band, 1910 to 1915 and 1990 to 1995, do not travel outside, right? It is only specific for US. Since Starlink wants to compete with the mobile operator or want to create more leverage with the mobile operator like Verizon, like AT&T, they need to have their own low frequency spectrum because high frequency spectrum cannot be integrated into this mobile phone. For that, you need low frequency spectrum. So what they did was they bought the EcoStar spectrum recently, about 65 megahertz spectrum in US at a price of $17 billion, right? So that shows that how focused they are in their D2D strategy. And that's why it kind of resonates with what they are trying to do in India with their Gen 2 satellites. And it also resonates with what Reliance is doing with their fresh application to ITU, which we are going to talk about the satellites and the bands that they have applied for. And what Airtel is trying to do and what Vodafone is trying to do and how their interests either resonate or are in diversion to each other. We are going to understand that. That is very important to understand the overall strategy of the various stakeholders in this space, how they are going to move forward and how the regulator is going to behave going forward in order to ensure that overall national interest is protected from a security point of view, right? So Gen 2 capacity has got three layers. I've already told you, you cannot simply multiply the number of satellites with a marketing number and say this is the speed. You need to take into consideration all dimensions, deploy satellites, lower shell, then the flexible usage of of channels as well as beams. So all these have to be taken into consideration, which is extremely important from a network planning point of view. Now in India, if you only talk about broadband, it is possible that India may not clear those higher frequencies, like maybe L band, or not L band, E band, W band, and V band, etc. Because there are some conflict with this higher frequency with the existing players, because E band is used for backhaul, for terrestrial backhaul, the mobile operator. Even if they don't, even if they give some part of the frequency for broadband, still the broadband speed will increase tremendously, and therefore Gen 2 has value in India from a broadband perspective also, apart from D2D, right? And this is just a snapshot as to how many satellites each operator is pushing for, how many Starlink has in Gen 1 and Gen 2, how many OneWeb has, right? And how many SCS have, and you can just take a snapshot and have a look, right? So in India, just getting an approval from InSpace does not really make you empowered to offer services. There are multiple gates here. Gate 1, Gate 2, Gate 3, Gate 4, Gate 5, and Gate 6. Unless you clear all these gates, you will not be able to allowed to launch. You will not be able to launch in India and offer any services, right? So there are two paths here, right, which have different control model. Direct satellite broadband. So you have got foreign satellites with proprietary user terminal in India with gateway control, routing, and security compliance. This is what Starlink has been trying. Starlink has still not got approval. The other is the SCN route, and with D2D with an Indian mobile operator, right? The SCN, TRAI has already started the process. You know that because this is the consultation which TRAI has started here for SCN. So if I go up and see, this is what the consultation is. And this consultation was started on 8th April 2026. And I think the people have already responded to this consultation. And on the basis of those response, I have been able to strategize which operator is playing what game as far as Indian operators are concerned, right? So this SCN with D2D, if you ask me, is much easier to deploy from a security point of view compared to the direct satellite broadband, which I am going to explain in the coming videos, right? Now, look at the D2D spectrum war. Now, this D2D spectrum war behind Starlink Gen2, Generation 2. Now, spectrum I'm going to discuss in more detail in this video, right? In D2D, spectrum is the strategy. So this is the next video which I'm going to come up with. But before that, I want to give you a glimpse what the various stakeholders are trying to do, what Airtel is trying to do, what Jio is trying to do, what VI is trying to do. Because these insight I got from their response which they are submitted within the TRAI's consultation paper, the SCN consultation paper, this paper, right? So when I look at Airtel is saying that you should not wait for the WRC 27 for the utilization of satellite in the IMT spectrum. Means they are saying that allow the IMT spectrum to be opened up for satellite connectivity. See what ITU does. ITU actually is a global body where all countries participate and they do global harmonization so that there are no border interference. And this will happen in WRC 27 where they will identify certain IMT spectrum for deployment of satellite connectivity, because the terrestrial network as well as the satellite network has to work, in tandem, and they have to coordinate with each other. There could be chances of interference, lower capacity, etc. So ITU is doing that work. What Airtel is saying that let ITU do whatever they want, but please open up my IMT spectrum so that I can start offering these services immediately. Vodafone Idea is also doing the same thing, whereas Reliance Jio is saying that don't do that. You offer these services, let them offer these services using the MSS and FSS spectrum. So they are not talking about the IMT spectrum. They are not pushing very hard, which clearly tells me that they want to do it with their own satellite consultation, which they have recently filed in ITU, and I'm going to show you that how this filing looks, right? So here is the submission of Jio, and there are two files which they have also attached in their submission. You can see clearly number of planes 60, total number of satellites 1600, and then this was sent on 18th August 2026, date of receipt 18 August 2026, right? And we have these two files. On the basis of these two files, I have created this I have not done. I have asked Claude to do it, and the Claude has created this animation. And here you can see all the shells, shell A 48-degree inclination, shell B 70-degree inclination, and you can see the number of satellites, and you can see the frequencies also here. And you can see the D2D frequencies. One is the 1800 megahertz band, S band, and then we have the 1800 megahertz band and the 850 megahertz band, which is the most interesting band, because Reliance Jio has, if I show you the 850 megahertz band here, 800 megahertz band, you will find that Reliance Jio has pan-India contiguous spectrum. You just leave aside this can be harmonized easily. This is the Reliance Jio red color, 10 megahertz pan-India contiguous. And if you look at Airtel, what Airtel is doing, Airtel is saying 1800 megahertz and 2100 megahertz, they should be allowed to do D2D, and that 1800 and 2100 megahertz is required to be harmonized across all the circles. Look at this, green is Airtel. And if they don't, they will not be able to launch D2D service. So Airtel has requested harmonization across all circles. Similarly, 900 megahertz Vodafone Idea, if they want to do with AST, still it will require to be harmonized. This blue color is Vodafone Idea. Okay. So this is the situation. So, but people may say, oh, broadband is the way to go. In my view, D2D is the way to go. Why? Because here the devices are actually owned by the customer. This D2D service is just an incremental ownership of device. It's going to cost incremental. So they are already owning the device, those high-end customers, postpaid customers who are already owning iPhone. For them, it is not going to be incrementally more costly to own a device, because the device cost is key. Here, the device for broadband is 30,000 rupees, right? Or 35,000 rupees. So owning a broadband device where you already have cheaper broadband, Airtel is offering, Reliance is offering, FWA, UBR. I don't think that this makes more sense than D2D. D2D, here the volumes will be higher and incremental charges you can make, 300 rupees, 400 rupees. That will drive the business case for D2D much more significantly than broadband. So the real race now starts after this in-phase approval. Because what will happen? Once the in-phase approval is given, then you have to look for harmonized spectrum if you want to do it in IMT spectrum. Because IMT spectrum is the low-hanging fruit. It has already got the capability in that particular band. Then you have to take approval from all the neighbors. If you don't go, if you don't want to wait till WRC 27, you have to take the approval, and then you have to basically look for which rule to apply. Now, these I am not going to describe here right now. I am going to only talk about these things in the next video, which I will be doing pretty soon. And this is going to be pretty important, friends, because spectrum is the key, right? As regards D2D is concerned, this is going to decide that how Starlink is going to play in India, and how Airtel, Vodafone and Jio is going to contribute to the play, and how Starlink is going to circumvent this issue of security, which they have not been able to circumvent in the broadband, for their broadband. So it will be pretty interesting, friends. Wait for this video, and we are going to talk about the competitive dynamics between all the players, the Jio, the Airtel and the Vodafone Idea as regards this D2D play in India. Thank you, friends, for watching this video till the end, and I'll come back with the next video pretty soon.